All right. Well, welcome to the panel, everyone, and thanks to everyone for joining us. With us here today is Michalis Solomondos, our Vice President of Sektor, and my name is Angelos Nicolaou. I'm the Director at Sektor. Sektor is a construction technology integrator for Europe and the Middle East. When we started our company just 2 years ago, we thought we could only dream of hosting a panel like this one today. We started Sektor because we believe in change. We believe that change ultimately makes us better, and we believe in the champions of change that are working in construction sites. And we wish we could be at the Big 5 event in Saudi Arabia to meet you all, but when the circumstances require it, we must adapt.
That's right, we must adapt, and thanks to our communication sponsor, Imperial Properties, we are hosting you live today from beautiful Limassol in Cyprus. And we are at the incredible marketing suite of their project EECOM. We chose to be here today because the EECOM and the EECOM team inspires us and gives us hope that the future of construction is bright. These are difficult and uncertain times for all of us. But when there is a crisis, there is also an opportunity. We might not know what the future holds, but what we do know is that everything around us is constantly changing.
Changing indeed, Michalis. Now, when we were born about 30 years ago, give or take, the worldwide population was standing at just 5 billion people. Today it is standing at over 7.5 billion and expected to grow to 10 billion people by just 2050. The economy is expected to double in size by 2040 and nearly triple in size by 2050. Perhaps more importantly, middle-class households, those that are spending between $10 and $100 per day, are expected to expand rapidly, from just 2 billion today to more than 5 billion by 2030. This brings with it a huge surge in demand for new construction. And this is why the construction industry is expected to be one of the leading, if not the leading, contributors to global economic output in the next 10 years. Stunningly, we remain one of the least digitized, least safe, least productive, and most wasteful industries in the world. Working in a construction site today is more dangerous than working in any other occupation. Perhaps just as important, the building and construction sectors alone are responsible for nearly 40% of all carbon emissions in our planet. Changing this trajectory is in our hands, and what a better time to discuss how to prepare for the next 10 years of construction.
Exactly, the time is now, and for that purpose, we have a great panel with us here today. Joining us is Ian Williamson, Chief Projects Delivery Officer at the Red Sea Development Company, a Saudi giga project of immense economic impact. We have Riad Bsaibes, CEO of Amana Group and owner of Amana Contracting, DuBox and DuPot. We have Giles, CTO of AECOM EMEA, a key player in the shaping and reshaping of the construction and building worlds, as well as Matt Gough, the Director of Innovation at MACE, one of UK's leading contractors and a major consulting player in the Middle East. Gentlemen, welcome.
Welcome. All right, everyone. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We'll have a one-to-one Q&A with our panelists. Moving on, we'll go to an open discussion. Then we'll have a rapid-fire answer where each of the speakers will have 60 seconds to answer the question that we asked them, and then we'll leave it open to Q&A. So, Ian, let's get started off with you. You've spent over 40 years of your career on both the owner and the consulting sides of the table. Now you have a top role in one of the world's most influential construction projects. When it comes to what works and what doesn't, you've pretty much seen it all. Now, I'm about to ask you the question that everyone here wants answered. Are these giga projects in Saudi Arabia, given the recent developments happening?
Thank you, Angelos, and hello to everybody from sunny Riyadh. I'm taking it on trust you're all out there. I'm relying on Angelos that we have got an audience, or as I'm talking to my panel and the host. Look, with the 3 giga projects in Saudi Arabia are very much NEOM, Qiddiya, and the Red Sea project. There's several other very large-scale mega programs going on in Saudi as well. If I stick to your question and address the giga projects, yes, they're very much all at full speed. They're very much all under construction. In fact, I guess if you presented them better, they're all actually under master planning, they're under design, they're under procurement, and they're under construction. These programs are so massive, they're in the tens of billions of dollars. Clearly, there's hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of projects when you get to the scale of a NEOM that are all running in parallel. They're all at different stages. But these projects are all very much committed by the government. They're on site. They have a commonality. They all represent the 2030 vision. The 2030 vision is to drive GDP and diversification of the Saudi economy. It's to create jobs in the tens of thousands for the Saudi economy and for locals and nationals. So these projects are critical. They very much have the backing at the top level from His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and from our boards, and they're very much being driven forward. So look, if I speak for the Red Sea project specifically, there's absolutely no let-up in the pace, despite the global pandemic that we've all been facing. We've maintained progress on site. We've had contractors who've committed to the cause on a long-term basis. Amana DuBox with Riyadh being one. Archirodon, we've got Al Majal, Al Arabi, we've got a whole host of the contractors have stuck to the pace. We've probably seen a drop-off of only about 15% in productivity over this last 3 months, despite the difficulties of getting labor and plant and materials to these remote sites. So look, all 3 projects are going full bore to get these projects delivered. The Red Sea project, if you went to the, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to stay on that a little bit, moving forward, what will you be on the lookout for in terms of the partners you contract with for the Red Sea development project? You mentioned a few. You mentioned DuBox, Amana. You mentioned Archirodon. Well, what will you be looking out for, both from your current partners as well as the ones that are upcoming?
Well, look, this is a long-term game. You know, if you want to enter it on a project of this scale, there's no good entering it on a project basis. Trying to come in and win a single project and evaporate after is just a waste of time for us and for you. So look, we're looking for investment. Now we're going to raise the bar on these projects. All these giga projects and have got a commonality that they're in areas of natural beauty. They're in areas of incredible sustainability and biodiversity. You know, our aim is to raise the bar on all of our supply chain when it comes to developing in these sensitive areas to a point where we're looking to enhance the environment, not damage it, not stay neutral, but to get positive diversification in the sustainability and the environment, and then totally raise the bar in health and safety standards and quality that have been achieved in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East to date. So that's our objectives from a partner. And I think to achieve it, we're looking for long-term investment, consolidation, and a lot of alliancing with global capability to make it happen.
Excellent. Let's move on to Riyadh and continue that conversation. Riyadh, the architect and inventor, Fuller Buckminster, that I'm sure a man of your background is very familiar with, once said, "You never really change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes existing models obsolete." As someone who's on the crossroads between a traditional construction company and an innovative offsite manufacturing company, what's your insight on this? We've seen from Ian now how demanding these new mega projects and giga projects can be. There will be more of them popping up around the world. We'd love to hear from you on your insight there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for joining and for your time. You're absolutely correct. I mean, another thing is a quote that comes from Albert Einstein, you know, change is the only constant. It really takes forward-thinking developers that want to future-proof their developments to think of technology and how it can enable things that have been unable to be obtained in the past. Offsite construction is something that does that. So we in Amana are fully convinced in the future of offsite construction. We're building a platform of which DuBox and soon to be launched DuPod are pieces of it, because this is the future in our mind for many reasons. First, it's enabled now by the presence of BIM and computing power, so you're able to put things together and model them ahead of time and lock in the design, then be able to go to production in a manufacturing environment, which allows you to be lean, efficient, inject manufacturing know-how from the fourth industrial revolution, and also lower your dependency on manpower. Today, we use 30% less people in DuBox than traditional construction. At the same time, also, it's an environment that allows you to do minimal impact to the construction site. So a site like the Red Sea Development Company, we have minimal presence at the site. 80% of the work is done in the factory. We've established a factory in Saudi Arabia, a few kilometers away from the actual construction site. We assemble everything in the factory. We pre-design it, of course, assemble it, ship it to site, and then assemble it on site. So minimal impact on site. Within the factory, you have safety, you have the manufacturing efficiencies, we have the safety, we have the quality, higher quality and deliverable, ability to deliver on time, and also the ability to train people better on a construction site. So you can actually have higher local content and higher local talent than you do on a construction site because it's a manufacturing setup. However, saying that, I still want to emphasize that offsite construction is still at its beginning, and there's a long future for it in our opinion, and there are different models to do it. We are of the school that because we are a contractor with the DNA of a contractor, we believe that you cannot come in and operate in a vacuum. You cannot come in and disrupt the whole ecosystem. You come in and you blend with the ecosystem and you leverage existing ecosystems around you or existing value adding partners to what you're doing. And that's why with the DuBox and the DuPod model, we don't disrupt the construction sector. We change it, but we don't fully disrupt it because we maintain the same ecosystem of suppliers, subcontractors, and what have you, so that we can have a more efficient delivery mechanism to the end user. Of course, this is enabled by digitization. It wouldn't have been possible a few years ago. And of course, as digitization increases in our sector, we'll be able to deliver more and more of that. Along those lines.
Makes a lot of sense, Riyadh. And talking about BIM and digitization, do you see a lot of pushback from your people out on the construction site? And what are some of the steps that you've taken to help them embrace innovation? Because what you described is great in theory, but how do you actually put that to practice?
Absolutely, and it takes time for that. So the foundation is BIM, and then you build on BIM. So BIM is central to our design completely. To our coordination of the different disciplines, absolutely, that's the case. And then at site, you're right. It's a process that takes time to enable the site as well to see the benefit of BIM, whether it's through BIM 360 or whether through different coordination tools, so that you take those tools in addition to the engineering in the office, you take it into the site. And that's an ongoing process. I mean, that's one of the things we're taking away from the lockdown, is that we are going full speed ahead with digitization as we go back to the post-COVID-19 environment, if you may. I think the construction sector will be changed post-COVID-19, and I think Matthew and Giles have a lot to talk about as well on this point. But absolutely, it's going to be a change, I think, from a digitization point of view.
Absolutely. So not just talking about change in theory, but actually giving the people quick wins, like you described now with field tools. Great.
Giles, this one is for you. You are responsible for the technical excellence of AECOM. And it seems that AECOM has its hand under every innovation rock that we turn. That being said, we oftentimes see consultants taking a back seat when it comes to adopting new technologies, because the reality is often these are at the discretion of the owner. Do you take any steps towards positively influencing your clients?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's important to acknowledge that just because an innovation may be cutting edge doesn't mean it will be right for that particular project. So our approach is to support the advancement of innovation within the construction industry, is to ensure that any suggestions that we make are fit for purpose and will ultimately enhance the financial and social and environmental performance of the asset or the project. We also look to use innovation to solve the client's particular challenges and positively influence them towards adopting new techniques. For example, at the moment, we're working remotely, but fortunately our teams have been working with the digital realm using digital design reviews for some time. We've been also able to use VR to show clients around their projects, keeping them updated on progress through team workshops. And for clients who are typically wedded to 2D drawings and a 2D approach, it's been useful for us to show them what is possible in the future and how digital design is helping move things forward and how future innovation may play a role. We know from our experience on big and small projects like Japoma Stadium and the Serpentine Pavilion that fast as its design can be achieved using virtual reality. For example, program critical decisions that need the input of multiple projects and stakeholders can be made in a quick and informed manner and anywhere in the world that gets clients adopting innovation. Our clients look to us to provide the innovations that solve their complex issues, and there will be more and more complex issues ahead of us in the new world that we're stepping into. In a current example, we're supporting major transport clients to tackle specific challenges through the EMEA Innovation Challenge that invites our employees to proactively suggest solutions that are then assessed by the client for their viability. So there's lots of opportunity. We have to balance latest cutting edge with what's really adding value to our clients.
A lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, Giles. And it's interesting. In a podcast that we were listening to just a few days ago, Tobias Lutke, the founder and CEO of Shopify, described the current situation as that we found ourselves in a 2030 situation with 2020 technology. So just in line with what you said, that customers don't even have a choice right now. We don't have a choice. We must adapt to innovation.
And the next question is for Matt. Matt, you find yourself in the unique position of being involved both with the consulting and the construction services of your company. And MACE is at the forefront of modular construction, and you're also innovating within that arena with MACE Tech and MACE Factory. Actually, some of your statistics are incredible, with 50% less labor and 0 incident rates in your projects. So what are some of the lessons that you learned that you can share with us today?
Good stuff. Good question. Thank you. I think just to come back to your Shopify quote, I think it's quite interesting when you consider that actually construction is still trying to use 1980 tech rather than 2020 tech, if we're honest. So there's lots of opportunity for change and doing things differently. In terms of lessons learned, there's a breadth. Just in terms of, I guess, MACE, particularly in the region, in Saudi, in terms of what we do, we're a 30-year-old business, and we've been operating in the Middle East for 20 years of those. We work across the property life cycle. We develop, consult, construct, and operate. And I think that's really important from a kind of lessons learned perspective one, as in you really need to understand everything from kind of client need, brief, all the way through to the overall impact and operation of your assets on completion. And that's been shared already by a number of my fellow panel members. We work on really complex projects at MACE, really cool ones. In Saudi, we've been involved in the Kingdom Tower for a number of years. In Dubai, we've been on the Dubai Expo 2020 as kind of program management lead with Jacob since 2014. I was watching a video just this week of our projects again in Dubai at One Zabil, where we've built a kind of 304 and 240 meter tower. And then if that wasn't complex enough, put a cantilever of a sky bridge 125 meters. It's like the world's longest cantilever. And to top it off, that goes across a 6-lane highway, which remained in operation during the process. So, we got some great roles on some great projects. And loads of lessons to grab from all of those. But the most important ones, I think, for the purpose of this call, firstly, how do we land those projects? It's not because we're greater or better or more innovative than others. We're not a country mile ahead of any of our competitors in terms of technical ability, I wouldn't say, but we've got great people. And it's all about, we are still a people-led industry. We tackle complex challenges day in, day out. We react to a constantly changing environment. And you need people who are up for that challenge. And that's kind of the most important lesson from it all. And then the second thing, I think, which is perhaps more technology lens at this point in time, is how successful are you or can you be at capturing and sharing lessons globally? We've all got massive project portfolios. We're doing some really interesting things, let's say here in the UK. Historically, it would have been really difficult to get that knowledge and transfer it into a different region like the Middle East. And it relied on people. We relied on people who wanted to go and work in another territory and to take that knowledge with them. The world has changed, right? We're designing online. We're now building a lot of stuff virtually. We've got live data of how things are, both being manufactured and assembled and operated. And I think there's a really important point here in this point in time around how do we double down on that innovation, that acceleration of digital, etc., so that we can deliver more complex construction projects, because that's what the world is going to need, right? You've already said the population growth is going up, the demand for buildings and infrastructure is ever increasing, and we're all going to have to try that bit harder.
Yeah, very, very interesting there. And I'm loving this theme, starting with Giles, who said that it's good to give immediate value to our clients and give them technology that they will actually see value in. And with Matt now saying, even dumbing down innovation a little bit to a point where we can have practical uses of it and practical implementation of it. Matt, is there a line there that you can describe to us, perhaps when it comes to data analytics? How deep can we go with that? Where's the line between innovation and intrusiveness when it comes to something like that?
Good question. I think, I mean, you say the craziest thing about data in the construction industry, as I see it right here, right now, is we don't share it, and particularly stuff that is critical to people's lives. So health and safety data, right? Why do we all protect health and safety data and keep it to ourselves rather than sharing it amongst the industry globally, thus that we may be better at predicting and preventing health and safety incidents, right? And it's just there's a bit of a deep-rooted sort of, you know, way of operating that is protectionist, and actually the other sectors that have moved a bit faster than construction in the last couple of decades have kind of released those barriers. You know, the big tech companies of the world have this mentality where you collaborate on standards, right? You share, you're open around standards, and you compete on delivery. And I think that's a really important kind of mindset shift that I am witnessing in certain pockets of the industry, but we've still got a long way to go yet.
You have a bit more of a complex role over there, given that you don't, well, in this EMEA region, you're not a GC as you are in the US, as AECOM is in the US. Is it something similar when it comes to that line between intrusiveness and innovation? Because we need to capture data there. Sure, Giles is unmuted.
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go, Giles. Sorry about that.
We're back. Good. Good. Yeah, I think Matt raises a good point. I mean, if you think back what we've managed to achieve in difficult circumstances in the last 5 months, and some of the barriers that we've taken down to move things forward, how we've learnt to work remotely and maintain productivity, there's a case to be argued. When we're forced to respond, we respond, and we've got to unlock what is it that's making us act and behave differently in difficult circumstances outside of our control. So I think there's a huge amount that we're still to learn about the 5 months we've just gone through and the months and years ahead of us. But how we behave, the line between protecting our IPR or the perceived IPR associated with some of our services and offerings and designs, should we be more open? Should we share more to the greater benefit of everyone? And I certainly think that's the case.
Yeah. Great. So thanks for that, Giles. Let's move on to the open conversation. Anyone feel free to jump in each other's answers. Ian, let's get back to you. I'm glad we have you back. I saw you were on and off a little bit there. But besides managing risk, controlling costs, and ensuring that your project will be completed on time, the very basics, the things that we all have to do anyway. What are some of the other goals that you believe technology can help you achieve, given your big goals in your project?
Well, look, I touched on the opening, the critical element for us and the essence of our development is the natural environment. So, how can we be informed by science in everything that we do? I guess as engineers and architects, we generally work in kilometers and meters and millimeters, but we're dealing with one of the world's best coral sites, top five in the world. Beautifully pristine. We've really got to get down to nanometers and picometers. We've really got to understand the science of what's going to disturb that natural ecostructure. We have seagrass, we have mangroves, we have some of the most endangered and critically endangered species of turtles and bird life and wildlife in the domain. So how can we, it's like a man on a boat to gather data historically in the scientific arena. People going out, making a field study, going back, laboratory assessment, and then quite a delay while you're trying to get ahead on master planning before that data comes to you. And you're doing hundreds of iterations of a master plan. So, let's get field instrumentation. We've already put this in place, weather stations, monitoring stations, tidal stations, measuring silt and build-up and cloudiness of water levels. Anything that may affect or improve the natural environment. Let's get all that data with telemetry so it can be beamed out to the scientists. You don't need, boats going out. This can be just relayed, and KAUST is very much our academic partner in that regard for our project. So let's get KAUST everything they need to help inform us of how we develop in an environmental sensitive area and enhance the natural environment. Can we grow more coral? That is something we're experimenting with at the moment. Again, using KAUST. So you've got the environmental side of it. Clearly, on the design, procurement, construction, we've embraced digital technology. We've invested heavily ourselves. We're building a digital twin of our project. So what is a digital twin going to do for us? It's going to allow us to experience the environment before we've actually built it. It's going to allow us to model, to simulate traffic flows, to simulate smoke control conditions. It's going to allow us to simulate patterns of behavior for our customers. And when we open for operations, it's unbounded. It's only limited by your imagination, what technology can enable us to do. So look, we fully embraced GIS and BIM is our core platform. Don't enter the race with us as a consultant if that's not where you're at. Don't try and join now using quill pens and slide rules. If you're not up to date with the very latest tools and technology, you won't have a place at the table on the Giga and Mega projects in Saudi. So look, technology is everything for us. It's the, I think you opened this conference with a discussion about the incredible low performance in terms of productivity improvements in the industry and the low adoption of technology. This is the opportunity. We've got a great opportunity to help as a client inspire the supply chain to embrace the very latest methodology and techniques. So, we've shot our process over the last 2 years. It's accelerating. We're not perfect with it by any means yet. And ultimately, we're creating a smart destination. I mean, we hear about smart cities. We're not building a city, but very much this is engaging smart technology that enables the customer experience, improves operational efficiency, and generally just improves the way we get there. We know the construction industry creates some absolutely amazing outcomes, and it gets there despite our best intent. So how do we get there in a much slicker and smooth manner without the cost and time overruns and getting the quality standards we need? So technology is going to enable.
So not only build smart cities, but build them in a smart way, not a dumb way. Riad, you're also involved in this project, and as Ian just described, you need to be up to date with your tech in order to get a seat on the table. All right, you got a seat on the table. How do you keep your people involved as the project goes along? Not just talking about BIM, how do you get them using it, being involved with it, etc.?
Well, it's all about change management, yeah? So, I mean, first of all, we cannot do what we're doing today in DuBox without BIM being part of the DNA. So right off the bat, it's there. It's built into the DNA of the company. And then about adoption at site or outside the engineering, let's say, that comes with change management. That comes with setting objectives and performance and so on. And it also comes with allowing a culture of entrepreneurship within the company so that you allow people some flexibility to do things so that they can digitize the parts that they're working with. So to allow different parts of the value chain to be digitized. Doesn't have to be driven down from the top. If it wasn't for, frankly, 10 years ago, we could not have done what we're doing today because BIM and computing power wasn't there. You just couldn't do it. And you have to live on the faith that 10 years from now, the computational power will be much more than now, and therefore you'll be able to do different things with BIM and with offsite construction. Today, offsite construction might be thought of as a very boring, modular, boxed design. But with time, with computational power, with the twin models, as Ian was referring to, you can start making things much more exciting as you move forward. Right now, currently, for example, we're allowing a unit within DuBox to play around with 3D concrete printing. So we have the first 3D concrete printer in the UAE. We've had it for 3 years in collaboration with an international material supplier, and we're testing different conditions, humidity, temperature, speed of the printer, and so on. You have to allow that. You have to sort of allow it to be within the DNA of the culture.
Going now a little bit deeper on modular, and this question is for Riyadh and Matt. What would you say to those worried, perhaps even people like Ian, that modular won't be able to cater to their bespoke requirements? How can they achieve a bespoke result even through these more innovative construction methods?
Matthew, do you want to go first?
After you, Riyadh, after you.
Okay, I mean, I would say from our experience, Nick, we've done many, many projects with DuBox, yeah? And if you put them all on the same screen, they don't all look alike, point one. Point two, if the atom looks the same, so the atom being the container, if you want, shaped box, the 20-foot container shaped box, which is in concrete, if that looks alike, but when you put different atoms together, you get different molecules. So it's the creativity and the ability to use BIM creatively, and so that you can do different designs with those atoms. So it's not, so while the atom is still the same, you combine atoms in a different way and you get a different looking molecule with the envelope and so on of the building.
Matt?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I guess I would just build on it. I think predominantly here at MACE, we talk about moving from construction to production. That's kind of like our North Star. That's what we're trying to do as a business. And within that, we're trying to do two things. We are trying to industrialize the products, right? We're trying to standardize products so that it is more repeatable, it's more efficient, it's faster, it's better, it's cheaper. But we're also trying to industrialize the process, which is really the kind of like the technology embedding, etc. And again, you know, designing differently, briefing differently, procuring differently, manufacturing differently, etc. And within that, you know, there are many different ways of modern methods of construction that lend itself to deliver better outcomes for clients. You know, modular or volumetric is one, but there are also, you know, a number of kind of off-site manufacturing techniques that we think are valid and can deliver the full suite of different building requirements. You know, many companies now use predominantly off-site manufactured concrete tunnels, for example, in infrastructure, etc. They've standardized the process and they've standardized the products, but they haven't led to a kind of homogeneous, everything is the same type environment. So there is still a lot of flexibility within it, and you can still deliver the benefits of, let's call it modern methods of construction or industrializing construction without having to give up on aesthetic quality or performance.
Ian, we spoke in the past during the pre-interview interviews. We spoke about how involved you are as an owner. Given what Riyadh and Matt just described, do you think that the owner of the future will be more involved, and should they be more involved? Are you seeing better results coming because of that?
Yeah, look, you know, the Red Sea Development Company, I think, has got a unique model as a developer, you know, driven by our CEO. You know, we chose to take in-house the project management, design management, cost management, the management-based activities, and construction management. You know, we want to deal direct with the specialist parties. We don't want in-betweens that are going to slow the process down. We want to be able to relay our vision and our intent much more directly. And look, we've gone around the world over the last 9 months, and so have the other Giga projects, and we've shared notes. We've canvassed the capability of the off-site manufacturing market. You know, and to Riyadh's point, you know, it is still at very early days. It's still it's still almost simulating what you do on site in a off-site manufacturing yard, which clearly you can do with less labor, you can do in a more controlled manner, but it's still not very automated. The whole process lacks automation. Why? Because as owners, we reserve the right to have totally bespoke, unique products every single time we build a building. So, how do you get mass customization, Matthew's on the point, of standard products? How do we get this library of standard products that we all then reshape? For example, you can do this on a large scale. If you take the Louvre building in Abu Dhabi, the actual buildings themselves could be prefabricated within that museum. They're a box. They're a well-presented box. But the beauty is in the roof. So, again, how much more can we do where the facade treatment, the roofscape is the bespoke bit, but everything else inside the buildings, in the envelope, the watertight, the airtight envelope is offsite manufactured. It's critical for us. It's critical for NEOM when we've got islands in an archipelago. We've got 90 islands. We're developing on the outer reef, 40 kilometers offshore. Man hasn't touched these islands. Nature's got a strong hold. We can't afford thousands of laborers and boots landing on those islands during construction. We will destroy the whole purpose of building on those islands. We have to offsite manufacture. We need 80% at least of those products offsite manufactured. And historically, maybe in the hospitality arena, 20–30% has been achieved. We've got a much higher ambition than that. Clearly, we have to build jetties, we have to build substructure, but if we can build monocoque structures and place them in, it doesn't have to be pre-finished volumetric construction. It could be flat pack assemblies, clever ways of bringing it to site, and low labor requirements to actually put it together. So, the industry is very early days. I think Amana DuBox have got a unique product in it being concrete structured. There's clearly a lot of metal stud and cementitious kind of paneling treatments. I don't think anyone's fully cracked it yet. I think it's going to be interesting, but it's the way the industry has to move forward to create innovation and change. It's definitely the part of it. Over the next 10 years, we're going to see a radical change. The clients of the Red Sea Development Company, we're going to be wholly committed to helping the industry do it. Now, clearly, shipment comes into it as well. We've got a lot of land. We've got 28,000 square kilometers. We've got a country-scale project. There's no reason manufacturers could not assemble final product or assemble it on our land. Take a plot of land, we'll bring infrastructure, put up a building, and then try and get some automation into this process. And then we remove overseas shipping, remove transportation risks, reduce the cost, reduce environmental.
We'd like to go a little bit deeper on this point for the people who cannot go into modular construction at the moment. And modular is great. Giles, this one perhaps is for you, but like all changes, it can take time. Is there any hope for projects or project components that cannot go that route at the moment? How can they improve?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been involved in modular probably now for about 15 years. And as you say, it's moved relatively slowly. But again, let's look at the last 6 months, 5 months, and see how quickly we can move when we need to. Picking up Ian's point, there are situations now, we can't do it traditionally. You can't use traditional methods. You've got to move quicker. You've got to have better quality, more sustainability, and it's got to be safer, and it's got to be of overall value. However, there are elements where perhaps you have to break down modular into components and how you assemble components, but also how you recognize the traditional methods, and where you can't perhaps change the overall approach, you can change elements of it to make it smarter. As Ian made reference to, do it in situ, construct temporary factories, temporary facilities to enable you to do some of the build in a modular way. So I don't think there's a no, we can't do approach. I think it's absolutely we have no choice but to look at things differently for all of the reasons that the team have just spoken about.
Excellent. So let's move on to a more open question. Anyone's free to answer this one. When it comes to data analytics, we know that they will play a crucial role in the future of construction. But when we're talking about accurate data capture, we all know that's a different story. How do we promote a more transparent construction industry that we know can benefit all of us? Perhaps the more practical people that are on the table here today would like to answer this one.
I can take a stab at it quickly if you'd like. I would say 2 points quickly. One is IoT, Internet of Things, utilizing the fact that technology today is not what it was 10 years ago. So a lot of this data can be automatically captured. So for example, today we are test trialing companies that provide IoT on the hard helmets of the labor, a company called Wake Up, where we can measure the productivity and measure the presence of people on the site without any interference with the workflow. And the second point I would say is that industry recognition that we need to bring data together. So for example, hoteliers, what I came to understand in Dubai, for example, on a weekly basis, they aggregate through a third party their room occupancy. And then that data is given to them later on. So they can know how do they compare with their peers on certain metrics, and therefore be able to improve the markets for themselves. I think the construction sector with the different value players within the value chain need to do something like that. So we can compare aggregated data on an anonymous basis and be able to benchmark whether on safety, quality, cost, or delivery.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I think the promotion and use of common data environments such as BIM 360 or ProjectWise as a standard. If we're all working in these 3D environments, managing information properly, data can be shared, between projects. It can be done safely. It can be done securely. We also need to promote common data standards so we're able to share information easily across the industry. There's a number now. There's 2 common BIM standards. So we've got to embrace that as an industry, be more open, share perhaps the IPR in a different way that we have done commercially before. That will help us take it forward.
Anyone else would like to add to that?
I think there's not. Sorry, go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ian. I guess just to shed a bit of colour on it from our side, we're no doubt, as per my other panelists, we're in the midst of a digital transformation. It has just had a kind of rocket behind it for the past 8 to 10 weeks as a result of COVID-19, but we've still got a long way to go. And one of the things that we've worked out is, we talk about data and, us construction industry not doing much with data, and I wish I understood my data. The reality that we found is that we don't have enough data. So yes, we've got masses and masses of historic data, etc., that is accessible to us. And we've got hundreds of sites, and they're all producing various, reports and data based on the variety of different construction technology solutions that we're using. But the reality is to operate a really kind of smart, intelligent analytics platform, we probably don't have enough. So I think Riyad's point is really relevant about the kind of how do we start to share and collaborate a bit more around this. The construction industry is big enough. There's a big enough pie to go after that we don't necessarily need to compete on all those kind of things, right? What can we share and collaborate around to build a better industry together, I think, rather than sort of pretending that we're all going to be that sort of bit more unique or special than somebody else as such.
Well, I was going to make the same point away as Matthew, that there is a shortage of data. It's surprising, given just how much has been built and designed. We scratch around for benchmark information. We're very project focused as an industry. We get a project done. There's almost relief it's finished. Everyone disbands and no one collects the evidence, if you like. We don't. There is some lessons learned, but we don't do it in a very authoritative manner. I'll give an example, and also echo Riyad's point of maybe third parties acting as the agents. I worked for Sainsbury's for 9 years in the 1990s. And we chose to share information with our competitors, who are Tesco's, Asda, and Safeway, and so on, the big food retailers and Tesco in the UK, which is the first bit of collaboration we'd done. You clearly you're slightly shy at exchanging what might be commercially advantageous information with each other. But we used a university. We used the University of Strathclyde as the independent body who stripped the data clean so it couldn't be attributed to the organization, and then they presented this back as statistical data. You could then read where you were, you knew your own data, so you could find where you're on the graph and take your own decisions based on creating improvement. Maybe this is a role for the institutions. Maybe the institutions could do a lot more to step in, be it RICS or any of the big institutions, step in and take over that responsibility. CIBSE, another. I don't think we'd be shy at sharing data if it was non-attributable, and as a consequence, we got a wealth of information coming back.
Yeah, excellent points, and I think that the point of the institutions being more involved is a strong one, and we are seeing more and more that as we're seeing data truly come into the picture, both from Europe, the Middle East, and the US. Now, let's move on to the rapid fire answers. You each have 60 seconds each to answer this question, and Giles will be timing you. We're all going back to our offices tomorrow. What are the very first steps that we should take in order to prepare for the next 10 years of construction? We'll answer in the following way. First, Ian, then Riad, then Giles, and finally Matt. So again, the question, we're all going back to our offices tomorrow. What are the very first steps that we should take in order to prepare for the next 10 years of construction? What do we do tomorrow, Ian?
Well, ask yourself why you're in an office. That'd be a good thing to ask at the end of this process. We've proven offices have a role for social interaction, but are we going out of office, go to an office out of habit or out of business necessity? Invest in human capital and technology, clearly, because that is the big shortfall in our industry. Embrace lean design and lean construction. Let's allow construction to pull through the requirements. There's far too much being done in the industry sequentially. Let's package it up and get it pulled through the system by the construction need. And I think organizations need to decide what they are. There's far too many organizations caught in the middle ground. They're neither fish nor fowl. Are you boutique and specialized, or are you large scale and integrated? So I think 80% of the industry isn't either or. They're just caught in the middle. It depletes their value.
From our point, we've already had our huddles over Teams, Microsoft Teams, and we're developing our digitization strategy. So as we go back to the office, it's we have our target by next year. A new ERP system is going to be in place, one that's built for the construction sector, and one that's mobile enabled, that's IoT enabled, and that talks seamlessly with the BIM environment. So that's already there. So by the middle of next year, we should have that in place. And along with that, I think is a relook at the structure of the company, of how can we enable working from a distance, and how do we restructure the company so that we're able to retain our talent and yet work from a distance and become more efficient as a company. These would be the two things. The third thing is really to continue plowing through and strengthening our offsite construction capabilities. We're launching in this month DuBox, which will focus on the wet areas of buildings, so the toilets and the bathrooms and the kitchen and so on. So it's really a stronger conviction on offsite construction, or a stronger bet on offsite construction. And that's my 60 seconds.
That was awesome, Riyad. Thank you so much. Giles, on to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, obviously, the first priority is the well-being of all of our people and looking after them and making sure they're safe. Echoing Ian's point, looking at flexibility in terms of work. And if we've proved we can be productive, not to be in the office 100% of the time, then perhaps that's the way of the future. Ensure people are skilled in using digital tools, BIM 360, ProjectWise, Navisworks, so they can embrace new working habits in 3D as we go forward. It will be the new norm.
So build with purpose. Matt.
Okay, so we're going back to the office. I think first thing would be stop thinking that you can predict what will happen in the next 10 years. We've just proven that change happens like that, right? And it's been happening for a long time. The pace of change is only getting faster, but oh boy, that last few months was pretty scary. So I would focus on the here and now. What can you do to get your business and your office match fit and ready to go? Because who knows what's going to come next, right? And be prepared for the change. The second thing I would say is we're having a lot of conversations where people are still talking about back to normal, right? And I think we need to ask ourselves the question of, was normal any good? For a construction industry that, you know, constantly beats itself up about how productivity's bad and the quality's bad and everyone's retiring, etc. It wasn't, right? Normal was not good. So let's take a bit of time to do that kind of reimagining of the industry. And now is the time for bold and brave. And I think that's the momentum that I would be trying to take back into the office when I go back in.
Awesome. Let's move on to Q&A. Let's see what we have here. Alexia, if you can, I'm not sure if you're able to put some of the questions on the screen. If not, I'll just read them out. We have a question here saying, do you see robotics being more incorporated in the construction industry in the coming 10 years? If yes, how so and in which form?
I can take that really quickly. I see exoskeletons being used on site. So tools or semi-robots, whatever you want to call it, exoskeletons that assist in lifting heavier equipment. That's already being tested. I see possibly robots, if you want, in the factory environment, so in an offset construction environment. But I don't see it really at site per se, maybe robotic elements.
Perhaps you have something to chip in here.
Yeah, I'm totally with Riyadh about the use cases. I always laugh at the robot sort of videos that you get out of Japan where they've essentially trained somebody to do something the old way that we already know wasn't a very good way of doing it. There's a really good video of a dry lining, somebody putting up plasterboard like a robot. Why do you want to do that? So yeah, more stuff needs to go off-site because you can control the quality and the product better, and it's safer and it's more efficient. And I do see robotics playing a real part to that. And I do think it's the kind of the stuff that is perhaps a bit more dangerous or difficult to do. Ian's already talked very eloquently about how Red Sea Development Company are using drones, etc., to automate difficult survey sort of requirements. And I think there'll be more of that. You know, what are the specific use cases that we could do to reduce the risk for on-site workers, etc.
Excellent. We have a question from Ibrahim Khan. He's asking, has 3D printing been a part of the construction industry? Is it feasible? And how soon will it be commonly used, in your opinion?
Okay, I can take a quick step because we're playing with that. I think 3D printing is a big word. There's 3D printing in polymers, there's 3D printing in metals, and there's 3D printing in concrete. So to think that we're at a point where you can 3D print a house, I think we're not there yet by a long shot. But to look at 3D printing components of a building, I think it's in the near future.
Thank you for that, Riyadh. Anyone else want to chip in there?
No, look, I'd just echo Riyadh said. Look, Dubai is, you know, still in a bit of the limelight for trying to 3D print buildings, but in fact, the generally components that have been assembled still, you know, there is a long way to go before you can 3D print an entire volumetric shape. But I think at component level, it's hard to imagine why it won't go there very quickly. So look, I mean, we're seeing it in the design on modeling. You know, you can 3D print a model overnight, and you can play around and destroy it and build another one, you know, remelt it and build another one. It's kind of good fun. So, you know, I think it's taken modeling back into the design arena. It's not all about BIM and technology. And I think as a component level, it's gonna come into site use. I think a little bit out before we start doing large volumetric shapes.
Excellent.
Yeah, can I just sort of jump in on 3D printing? One of the things that we do at MACE that's actually really helped our innovation cause accelerate is we use that kind of horizons model. So we talk about what's like now, sort of the next 12 months, what's the next kind of 3 years, and then what's kind of a bit further out, the 10 years bit. And then it really helps the 6,000 people that we have that work for us to understand where they should be focusing their efforts. You know, there's a huge amount that we could do to embed like the kind of the next 12 months that would massively improve how the industry operates. and it's all at our fingertips, and we should just do it. There's some stuff that's a little bit further out that we should be piloting and prototyping, and then there's stuff that kind of that next wave on. We call it investigate, where you know the kind of big brains and the crazies and you know Riyadh's kind of going for it as a test and a pilot. But for the wider industry to adopt at this point in time, it's just not there. And we shouldn't get too carried away on sort of heading towards that when there's a lot of perhaps quick wins or easier things that we should try and go after. And
right.
I'm all for it.
I
think, yeah.
Right. Going back to the
really
discussion about practicality that you spoke before, and perhaps this is a question that leads us straight to that. And Phillips Tarakan is asking, what about progress monitoring remotely? What are some of the practices that we're doing there?
I can tell you.
Progress report. Oh, go ahead.
I mean,
go ahead, Rick.
One proof of concept that we're doing, a POC that we're planning right now, is working with a startup that utilizes computer vision to identify figures, and using so the vision is that we have dumb cameras on site, and those dumb streams videos go through an AI engine that we train so that it's able to understand what activities are on site, and therefore down the road is able to quantify how many man hours have been used for what activity by which laborers, and therefore be able to quantify the productivity of those laborers down to the name of the person and the people they're working with. Now that's the holy grail in construction, but that's the kind of stuff we're doing POC of currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar. You know, we've looked at that same technology. We're putting up cameras which are, I guess, the usual time-lapse camera arrangement, and then we'll supplement that with drone coverage to capture much more intimately what's going on at productivity level. That's in the interest of the contractor and the interest of us. So we both have a very transparent understanding of the true measures of productivity. But, you know, to Riad's point, I think that technology with AI built into it is starting to move down to looking at unit operations. How long are they taking to do specific tasks? And then, you know, can you take it out further and start monitoring it right down at unit of labor level? But, you know, it's kind of exciting, the kind of concept of it, if it's not Big Brother watching you while you're constructing. But it's, you know, building AI into some of these techniques, so it isn't just the pretty pictures of a time lapse of look how our project was built, but it's gaining intelligence. Clearly, it's in all parties' interest of a very transparent understanding and measure, not just to certify clearly and monthly invoicing and promote good cash flow, but you know, to honestly to assess what is holding back productivity levels and how can we accelerate in certain areas. How do we resequence? How do we redirect labor? And how do we get the right materials on the work front in the right places? So I think it's coming. That technology is definitely emerging.
Right. We have another question here about precast and offsite manufacturing, and it's how was it affected during COVID-19, and how does that relate to how traditional construction was affected during the same period? And this will be our last question in the Q&A.
Well, if I address, you know, as I mentioned, I think from the outset on the opening question, you know, we've maintained extremely high levels of productivity on site. I guess in some ways we were fortunate that a lot of the work we were doing, you know, we just completed a batching plan, so we've got concrete available to us on site, green concrete available on site. We're moving a lot of earth around to raise land for coastal protection, sea level rise, storm surge, etc. And we're quarrying from 10 or 12 quarries around Saudi Arabia to create marine jetties and marine works and foundations and so on. So we were kind of fortunate that we could maintain productivity. I guess a lot of our focus was safety. You know, we built new accommodation in 3 weeks for over 800 staff. The Ministry of Education kindly lent us 4 schools that we fitted out for accommodation. We converted offices to accommodation. So, you know, our focus was very much on the safety of the workers. And, you know, it's not primarily about maintaining productivity, it's primarily about maintaining safety, both for our staff and for the 12 contractors we had still very active. You know, we've got 5 billion real of work committed. There's a lot of active work going place. So that was our commitment over the period. I've been very impressed goes back to partnering, the investment and commitment that the supply chain has shown to helping us retain progress on the project over that period. Quite remarkable outcome, I think.
I want to build on Ian's point and give an example to the person asking the question. So one of the projects we're working on is in the Red Sea Development Company, in Ian's company, and it's a DuBox model. So our work over the last 2 months have been within the factory, and the factory is a few tens of kilometers away from the site. Had that work been not precast and volumetric off-site work, we would not have been able to start shipping these boxes this month. It would have shut down the whole site. And we were able to do it because we're within a factory environment where you can maintain the social distancing and maintain the control of that in that environment versus an open site. So absolutely, off-site, precast, volumetric, modular, they're all, they are strong points, or they play towards a time when COVID-19 would come, or epidemics, or what have you. I mean, they're not as impacted.
Yeah.
Was it a similar situation in the UK, or was it a little different there?
Yeah, no, to be honest, the situation is the same. Sorry, Matt, go on.
Sorry, Giles. Go
ahead. Yeah, I think Riyadh makes a good point. When you're in a much more controlled environment, you can ensure and protect your productivity. It's as simple as that. So the more sort of lean manufacture, design for manufacture, modular, whatever that terminology you want to use, is more controllable and can be protected better than a traditional old style sort of project construction site.
Mm-hmm. Matt, you want to chip in?
Yeah, one of the problems that we've had in the UK is you've got to get people to site safely. So a lot of MACE's work is predominantly in London. So while we relaxed kind of lockdown measures around the construction site and construction workers being able to go to site, we weren't able to safely ensure that they could get to site. So we've had a real challenge around labour availability here in the UK. But those projects where your labour is a bit more dispersed and people are working away from site in terms of off-site pre-assembly, etc., have been able to kind of continue at perhaps a more of the pre-COVID-19 pace in some regards. And the other interesting thing that we're witnessing on our projects is that as people are now coming back to work, but at a reduced level, we're actually getting more work out of less people. And it's a sort of impact of, I think traditionally construction is you just throw men's site labour at a problem and you assume that that's the way to get your projects kind of working fast. And it's absolutely not the case. People have got a bit more space to do their work in, the environment's a bit more controlled, and they're delivering more efficiently all of a sudden. And it's been really interesting, this whole COVID-19 thing has definitely busted some myths for the industry. And it's time for us to really kind of build upon that and create a better industry as a result, I think.
Right, and combining that with what Giles said before, that we don't have any more excuses. It's time for us to move to the future. I think that makes for a really, really interesting point. Well, at this point, we'd like to thank you. Say thanks to our panelists for attending. It's been a pleasure putting all this together. And for everyone that is joining us from home, from your offices, we'd like to once again thank Imperial Properties and the EyeCom team for setting us up with this wonderful setting for our live stream.
Yeah. And for deep dives into the stories of the leaders that are building our world and the stories of executives like our panelists today, be sure to follow sector.build on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and finally, remember to save the date for the Big 5 event in Saudi Arabia next year. Inshallah, as they say there, we will all be there 7th to the 10th of March, 2021. See you all there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder that this session has been recorded, so you will receive a copy and a copy of the presentation that Sektor has provided as well. This will be emailed to you within 2 to 3 days of the webinar ending. Thank you for attending, and thank you so much to Sektor and all of our speakers. And of course, we'll see you at the Big 5 Saudi next year. Thank you very much, everyone.